Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking about my alternate history timeline, which I call Thomas Thundergem universe, which basically takes place on Earth, but in an alternate timeline where a bunch of things and different things happen, like cat people exist, dog people exist, bird people exist, that kind of crazy stuff. Your typical stuff that you'd see in a crazy 13-year-old's brain. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about the Finland Wars. So basically, this takes place in 1849. So basically, Germany reunified after the German revolutions in 1848. They all unified into one country. But they also made allies with Russia and France. But also Finland, and Napoleon invaded Finland and tried to take Russia from there, but they lost. But Finland became its own country, and by 1822. Anyways, enough of that. Time to hear. So basically, what happened is this. Basically, Britain and America invaded Finland in the 1830s and made it their new colonies, and turned it into their own countries and a part of their own countries. Turned it a part of their countries. But right here is the border town. This line right here represents the border with Russia. Russia didn't like the fact that there used to be land. Land was now, Britain's and America's land. So they also renamed the border towns Charlesbury and Londonderry. Tensions escalated when they had strict border policies along this line right here. One night, a hunter that was hunting in this forest. This whole area is right here is forest area between the two lines. One night, a forest hunter strayed through. A forestman strayed through. Pretend these defenses right here didn't exist. So he strayed far from hunting. Then he got shot while going on the enemy side. So ultimately they called up the French militia, and the 5th French militia to go enforce the border. In that time, more and more troops came. The purple or black is German. The green is obviously Russian. The blue is French. The yellow is American. The orange or red is British. Anyways, enough of that. The president of America, the United States, was gonna declare war, but instead he gave them sort of a 3. He instead tried to make sue for peace, but Russia and Germany and France obviously declined his peace offer. They declared war on December 5th, 1849. The 1851 when the current events that you see going on. So basically, in that time, the 5th French militia, which is right here, but originally it was like right here, in the middle of the Russian border town. I don't have a name for it because don't know anything in Russian. So they dug this entire trench network along the border. Same thing with Americans and British, but they also built two small forts. British and French.
It's a good color. Yeah.
You're good. The British and Americans were heavily undermanned. The British and Americans were heavily undermanned for this position on the border town. By 1851, they've bombarded each other with artillery, making this entire trench area right here, border area, a wasteland. Once giant forests with tall pines, reduced to nothing but dirt and mud. By January of 1851, when all the but none of the troops in that one entire year went over the top and attacked each other. They just bombarded each other with artillery, hoping to hit one of their fortifications. So when it turned January 1851, they mustered up most of the French forces in the area, all the German and some Russian. And in the Russian town area, they fortified it heavily with artillery at every key position. The only weak spot that in the entire trench network was this right here. It was a raw trench. The trench network wasn't that deep in this area or fortified. And these outposts right here between the trench networks were barely armed. Only armed with a couple. If you played Nobleman 1896, then you know what a stub gun is, but it's basically like a gun that only shoots 5 shots. Basically like a revolver, but it's more like a machine gun. Anyways, that's the only thing that the troops here in these little outpost areas were armed with, which is very powerful, but still, and had shoot more shots than average breech loader, but still they had Gatling guns. Some of these cannons right here, yeah, they're supposed to represent all types of artillery, including Gatling guns. So when it was by February of 1851, they finally chose to attack. The Russians charged over this choke point. Russian cavalry came, and the 5th French militia came. So time for the present event. The 5th French militia charged an artillery position, but ultimately were pushed back, ending with 30 casualties. Over here is just nothing. The British didn't charge over here because they were too afraid of that. This artillery point could easily annihilate them, even though they were well out of their range. Considering that they couldn't, even if they could, they would be, yeah. Anyways, but the Americans and British didn't send much troops over that 1 year. They thought they would never come close to attacking, going over the top and attacking. Well, they were very wrong. But anyways, on the second day of the first attack, they sent in Russian Cossack cavalry to try to attack the Americans and British, but they were pushed back and bombarded by this artillery piece, by that artillery battery. And an entire regiment, this 14th Russian Pavlovsky Grenadiers were all annihilated except one company. One ordinaire, which is about 14 people. This was a devastating loss, but they knew the Americans and British couldn't charge anytime soon because they were heavily undermanned. They didn't have enough troops to do the charge. So in the end, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to see more of this alternate universe content, and to see part 2. Bye.